A dry wind dragged the taste of dust and rot through the skeleton of what had once been a skyscraper. Steel girders groaned like old bones in the sun, the tower's shattered frame looming over the wasteland like a gutted god. Once, this had been the pinnacle of human achievement. Now it was a monument to what they'd lost, a rusted carcass picked clean by time, war, and desperation. Alex leaned against one of the girders, eyes squinting beneath a cracked visor. The sunlight was cruel here, washing everything in blinding heat and brittle clarity. Below, his crew combed through the rubble, their figures hunched and hungrily quiet. They moved like ghosts, draped in scavenged gear, stained with grit, skin leathered from the burn of too many days beneath a dead sky. This world was the only one they'd ever known. Born after the collapse, after the annihilation, after the war. It had happened fast, too fast. Alien ships had appeared, scarring the sky with fire and silence. No warnings, no demands, just total relentless extermination. The enemy's name was never spoken because no one knew it. The survivors called them the Armana, if they called them anything at all. But the name didn't matter. They had won. Earth belonged to them now. Captain Jake's boots clanged up a slanted steel plate. He was built like a wrecking ball with a beard, broad, scarred, and unshakable. In one hand, he held a mangled chunk of machinery, the kind of find that might earn them a couple days' worth of rations if it had anything usable. "Looks like we got ourselves a doozy here," he said, holding it out. Alex took it without a word. His fingers were calloused, trained from years of judging tech, not by its looks, but by weight, texture, and the whisper of potential. He turned the fragment over. Circuits melted, frame warped. Whatever it once did, it didn't anymore. It's fried. Might as well be space junk. Jake didn't back off. He jabbed at a patch of casing near the edge where something was stamped into the metal. "What about that?" "Those markings don't look like ours, and they ain't armana." Alex narrowed his eyes. It was a symbol. Stylized, sharp angles. Foreign, but not alien. Not the cold, clinical lines the invaders used. It was something older. Human, maybe, but not anything standard issue from before the war. Something about it pulled at him. Maya would know more. She always did. If there was knowledge left in this world, Maya was the one who could pry it free. He looked back over the rooftop to where the Junkyard Dog waited, half a ship, half miracle, nestled in the cracked earth like a sunburnt secret. It wasn't much, but it was home. "Load it up," Alex said. Jake raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" Alex nodded. "Let's see what this ghost has to say." The Junkyard Dog looked like it had died twice and been stitched back together with rust and prayer. Its hull was pockmarked with blast scars. Whole sections were repurposed from half a dozen ships and grounded aircraft. Engines sputtered on salvaged power cells, and the bridge was held together with industrial tape, wire, and sheer refusal to fail. But it flew. Barely. And that made it priceless. Their hangar, buried under dunes and forgotten concrete, was more tomb than base. But inside, when they rolled in the strange artifact, something changed. The crew was exhausted, filthy, half-starved, and still a thread of excitement crept through the air like static before a storm. Maya didn't even greet them. She was already peeling back the casing, eyes bright, hands moving fast. She was younger than Alex, sharper than Jake, and seemed like she'd been born with a wrench in one hand and a soldering torch in the other. "I've never seen anything like this," she murmured. Her fingers danced through the burnt wires and charred cores. Pre-annihilation, definitely. Military grade, but... She frowned, her voice trailing off. Alex leaned in. "But what?" "It's incomplete," she said. "Like someone built half the machine and then stopped. No operating system, no final schematic. Just a beginning." "A weapon?" Jake asked. Looks like it, Maya said, but it's missing too much. Without the rest, we can't even guess how it was meant to work. A familiar weight settled on Alex's chest, the bitter disappointment of yet another dead lead. They couldn't afford false hope. Time spent chasing dreams meant time not spent scrounging for food or fuel. And yet, something about this machine felt different. Not a weapon for conquest, something else. A last stand? A Hail Mary? Alex stared at the cracked holographic display. Incomplete schematics flickered, sputtering with every power surge, but even fractured, they spoke of potential. Something powerful, desperate, human. Could we finish it? He asked. Maya hesitated. Maybe. We'd need parts we don't have, tools we haven't seen in years. I'd have to rebuild a third of it from scratch. And that's assuming I can even figure out how it's supposed to work. They didn't have the luxury of wild projects. Not anymore. They survived on barter, tech for water, power cells for food, components for safety. Every minute spent tinkering was a minute stolen from survival, but Alex couldn't shake it. The thought burrowed into his brain and refused to leave. What if it worked? What if they could finish what someone had started before the world fell apart? What if it's not just a weapon, he said quietly. What if it's a key? Jake looked up. To what? Alex ran his hand across the battered casing. Evening the odds, Jake grunted. You think this thing could take on the Armana? I think it might help us fight like they never expected. Hope was a dangerous thing, but so was despair. All right, Alex said, stepping back. Let's get to work. That night, the hangar pulsed with new energy. Lights stayed on. Tools buzzed. Engines rumbled. Maya began rebuilding. Jake started refitting systems. The crew rallied. And somewhere in the cracked bones of a dead city, something stirred. Something unseen. Something watching. The first ember had been lit. They called it the Resurrection Project, though no one said it out loud. Not even Alex. Saying it made it sound like a plan, and what they had was closer to a desperate gamble wrapped in duct tape and blind faith. But something had shifted the moment they hauled that scorched weapon core back to the Junkyard Dog. Not just in the crew, in everything. They no longer scavenged for scraps to trade. They hunted for pieces to a puzzle no one could see clearly, a machine half lost to time and war, maybe never finished at all. And still, they believed they could build it. The hangar transformed. What had once been a graveyard for broken tech now buzzed with manic focus. Maya became a phantom, stalking ruined labs and long-abandoned outposts for components that didn't officially exist anymore. Her face grew gaunt, eyes ringed with the black smudges of sleeplessness and chemical burns. But her voice never lost its edge. Every part she dragged in, every fragment she connected, lit a small flame in her. Jake's crew shifted too. They were bruisers, salvagers, men and women used to hauling, patching, bartering. But under Maya's relentless drive and Alex's quiet purpose, they became something else. Engineers, problem solvers, fighters with grease-stained hands and minds bent toward creation instead of destruction. Even Alex, who'd always kept his hands off the tech, found himself pulled into the tangle. He'd stare at schematics long after the others slept, tracing half-finished circuits with calloused fingers. Not because he understood it all, Maya was the genius, not him, but because the machine spoke to him in a way nothing had in years. It reminded him of the world they'd lost. It dared him to imagine a world that could still be won. The cost was brutal. They poured what little they had into the project, traded valuable salvage for rare materials, burned their last fuel cells for a single night of power to run old simulation cores. Some days they had to shut everything down and scrape together enough to eat. Other days they worked through hunger and heat stroke because stopping would mean giving up. Word spread quietly. In the dust-choked trader lanes among the satellite-linked scavenger networks, whispers of a weapon, of a resurrection, of humans not just surviving but scheming. Some dismissed it as fantasy, others came to see it for themselves. Some brought tools, others brought trouble. Still, they kept going. Every milestone, a functioning capacitor, a test-firing coil, a successful circuit fusion, felt like a miracle, like defiance made real. With each success, the project took shape, not elegant like the alien tech, but solid, angry, and real. It was a Frankenstein's monster of scorched alloys and repurposed systems, unstable, ugly, but powerful. It didn't go unnoticed. The armana had never truly left. Their patrol ships still cut across the sky, their machines still enforced the silence, and now they began to drift closer to the hangar's dead zone. Probes swept through the sandstorms more frequently. At night, the crew would spot glimmers in the upper sky, too distant for strikes, too precise to be coincidence. "We're on the edge of a knife," Jake muttered one night, watching the static blurred feeds from a hidden drone relay. "One shimmer too many and we're ghosts." Alex nodded. He felt it too. The air had changed. The ground was tighter underfoot. They were walking a path that had no safe exits. "If they find out what we're doing," Jake continued, "they won't just come for us. They'll burn the whole sector down." Alex didn't flinch. "Then we give them nothing to find." From that point forward, everything shifted underground, metaphorically and literally. They rotated shifts, kept power use unpredictable, installed blast shutters and decoy signals. They ran drills like a militia, buried their comms, spread out caches. Maya blacked out the entire hangar's grid signature with layers of magnetic shielding, rewired from an old orbital mining station's leftover parts. But the pressure weighed on them. Days became weeks. Weeks blurred into months. The weapon was still unfinished, still temperamental. Sometimes it powered on. Sometimes it screamed and smoked and nearly took off Maya's hand. It was like teaching an old war machine to breathe again using salvaged lungs. Then one night, after a test nearly blew out the side wall, Maya stood up from a smoking terminal, a crooked grin splitting her soot-smeared face. "It's alive." The weapon core lit with a roar, not the clean hum of alien tech, but a violent, beautiful cacophony of mismatched systems clashing together in furious harmony. It was a brute, a beast made of leftovers and hate. But it worked. It worked. They tested it in a dead stretch of desert, far from anyone who might be listening. The first trials were disasters. Sparks flew, coolant tanks exploded. Alex nearly lost an eye, but little by little they tuned it, patched it, argued with it, loved it like it was one of them. And then, on a rusted test rail, a scavenged mining laser, retrofitted, overloaded, barely stable, cut a wrecked tank in half with a hiss of fury. The crew cheered, laughed, some cried. They hadn't just rebuilt a weapon, they'd resurrected a chance. Alex stared at the smoke curling in the air, the melted husk of steel, and felt something in him lock into place. Now it wasn't about fixing the past. Now it was about using it. They began transforming the Junkyard Dog for something far more dangerous. Panels were reworked to conceal weapon mounts. The new system was installed, buried beneath the ship's jagged layers. Old docking clamps were converted into launchers. Alex mapped out the orbital debris fields from memory, finding a zone no alien ship had reason to search. An asteroid belt thick with wreckage from orbital battles long forgotten. A trap. It was madness, the kind of plan born in heat stroke and starvation, whispered between the desperate and the bold. Jake loved it instantly. "We lure one of their patrols in," he said, thumping the table. "Light it up. Hit 'em where they don't expect it. Not for the win, just to prove we can." Maya agreed, though her smile was grim. "They crushed us because they had the tech. We just proved we can make our own." It wouldn't be a victory, not in the conventional sense, but it would be something more important. A message. That night, Alex stood alone on the ridge above the hangar. The wind carried the scent of scorched metal and dry earth. Far above, the stars blinked in cold silence, indifferent to human struggle. He looked back at the Junkyard Dog, battered, burning with potential, hungrier than ever. "You're not just a ship anymore," he murmured. They had fire now, and they were going to make the world remember what it meant to burn. The Junkyard Dog was burning, not in flames, though there had been plenty of those, but in memory. In every whispered story that passed through scavenger camps, every symbol carved into rusted plating, every hasty broadcast that risked detection to carry a single truth. They had struck back. The flagship hadn't survived. Neither had the lie that the Armana were untouchable. Alex didn't remember the explosion so much as the soundless stillness that followed it. One moment, chaos, alarms, screaming metal, Maya shouting coordinates, Jake yelling over the storm. The next, silence, then breath, then disbelief. They'd made it. Barely. The dog limped back through the asteroid field with half its hull venting pressure and the other half scarred from the blast. But it flew, and behind it, a trail of debris from the Armana's pride, a bleeding monument to human defiance. And with that, something changed. They'd given humanity more than a victory. They'd given it proof. The message spread fast despite the risks, carried by the underground networks, coded into fragments of static scrambled audio, etched onto the walls of forgotten bunkers. The dog bit back. "We are not broken. We can fight." People listened. They came. Not in legions, not yet, but in trickles. Pairs, then squads, hardened salvagers, runaways from armana-controlled cities, engineers who'd kept forbidden archives, even children, born in the dust, drawn by the idea that the stories weren't just stories, that someone, somewhere, had done the impossible. The wrecked hangar became a sanctuary, a forge. Old tech was pulled from hiding. Moth-eaten blueprints reappeared like contraband scripture. Satellites, long thought dead, blinked awake, their dormant codes whispering new orders. They weren't an army, but they were becoming one. And Alex, who'd never wanted to lead, found himself at the center of it. No longer just a scavenger with a haunted past, but a figure others looked to. His name carried weight. His decisions shaped the course of a rebellion not yet fully born. It was Maya who reminded him why. "This isn't about the weapon," she said, hunched over a jury-rigged relay one night. "It never was. It's about proof. That we can rebuild, that we can matter. You gave them that." Jake snorted from across the bay. "We gave them that. You did half the work, grease goblin." Maya tossed a bolt at him without looking. But she was right. The fire they lit in the belt didn't just crack a ship's hull. It cracked the silence, the despair, the belief that humanity was finished. They struck again, hit-and-run raids on patrols, recovery ops in ruined cities, sabotage missions against supply lines. Each act sparked another, rippling outward. The dog was reborn over and over again, each battle welding new scars onto her hull, like chapters in a living chronicle. Losses mounted, people died, friends vanished into the dark. But for each name carved into the ship's memorial panel, 3 more joined the cause. They reclaimed ground, mining stations, radar outposts, a water plant on the edge of the northern wastes. Small victories, but vital ones, symbols, statements. Alex stood one evening on the ramparts of an old refinery they'd taken back from the Armana after a brutal 3-day siege. Below, welders sparked, Children ran between piles of scrap, laughing for once. A banner fluttered above the gate, crude, hand-painted, but unmistakable, the jagged emblem of the Junkyard Dog. It hit him like a punch. This was real. They were building something, not just fighting back, but laying foundations. He could feel it in the ground beneath him, in the way people walked now, no longer hunched and afraid, but upright, defiant. When the mothership appeared, they were ready. It moved with slow arrogance, a continent in the sky. An unspoken message. You are nothing. This is over. But Alex had learned long ago, when something massive bears down on you, you don't stand still. You bite. The refinery was the trap. The rebellion's beating heart rigged to explode if needed. Fuel lines rewired into bombs. Power cores turned into warheads. Every pipe, every rail, a weapon hiding in plain sight. When the mothership descended, its shadow drowned the outpost in darkness. But the humans lit their fires first. The battle was not clean. The sky screamed. The dog weaved through beams of annihilation, her battered frame held together more by will than steel. Jake barked orders. Maya screamed at uncooperative systems. Alex piloted like a man possessed, turning every scrap of terrain, every fold of metal, into a shield or a weapon. Still, it wasn't enough. The mothership, wounded but intact, began to flee, to regroup, to retaliate. Despair clawed at Alex's throat. This was it, their chance, and it was slipping away. But then he saw it, a pattern, a gap in its defenses, a mistake, a chance, and Alex made the choice before anyone could stop him. "Get out," he ordered, cutting across comms. "All of you." Jake's voice cracked through the static. "Alex, take the fleet, save what we built. I'm taking the dog in." He throttled forward, didn't wait for protests, didn't let himself feel. The Junkyard Dog, his home, his weapon, his defiant last breath, soared into the mothership's wake. The overloaded haul rig, a bomb built in secret for this exact moment, detached just before impact. The light swallowed everything. Silence followed. Then the signal. Target destroyed. The cost, one captain, one ship. But the anthem they left behind? It echoed across the sky. Long after the fires died, they remembered. The story passed between camps, written in soot and engine grease, carved into the hulls of new resistance ships. Kids painted dogs with jagged teeth on scavenged drones. Fighters quoted Alex's last transmission. We bite. And wherever the aliens went, they found resistance. Not armies, not empires, but fire, lit in the ashes and roaring into Anthem.